But he meant it, right? And their goal, when they got married, their goal was to be saints and to be the parents of saints. And they're doing it, right? Like, they're saints. Their daughter is a saint. They've got another daughter whose cause for canonization is open, Leonie Martin. And she's really beautiful because she struggled with mental illness for her whole life. And she, you know, I don't think she ever got a diagnosis, but they think she may have had bipolar. And that wasn't an obstacle to holiness for her. That was an invitation to holiness. I love getting to know the lives of the saints. Yeah, and any of you who have sat down and talked with me over in my spot on my couch, I probably gave you a saint, right? I told you the story of somebody awesome who struggled the way you've struggled, or who succeeded the way you haven't yet been able to succeed. Because in our church, we have models of holiness that absolutely run the gamut. My very favorite scripture passage is Hebrews 12, 1 through 4. If you got your Bible, you can open up, keep me honest. Hebrews 12, 1 through 4 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us rid ourselves of every burden and sin that clings to us, and persevere in running the race that lies before us, while keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus, the leader and perfecter of faith. For the sake of the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising its shame, and has taken his place at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider all he endures in opposition from sinners, in order that you might not grow weary and lose heart in your struggle against sin. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood." As a mic drop right there. Right? I love that when people are like, it's just really hard to get out of bed to go to Mass in the mornings. And I'm like, Hebrews 12:4. "In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood." Okay. But I love that passage. FYI, did you know Catholics can memorize scripture? There's like no Protestant gene for that. That's like actually a thing that we can do because it's our book and we wrote it. Woohoo! I love that passage because I just feel like it hits me on so many different levels. Right? You look at verse 1, Hebrews 12. Hebrews is in the New Testament. Hebrews 12, verse 1, it's about like 95% of the way through. It's like way towards the end. He says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses," he's talking about the saints. Now, I have this image of the saints looking down. You know, I went into a church one time. Anybody been to Oxford? I ran into a guy here yesterday who, he was like, "Did you give a talk once at Blackfriars College in Oxford?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I was there." And I was like, "Of course we met in England, and now we're meeting in Southern Maryland." Like, duh, Catholicism. In the Magdalen College in Oxford, there's a chapel, and it has all of these dark wooden statues of saints. And when you walk in, they're sort of like hanging over top of you. You know, they like jut out over the seats. And you just feel like the saints are gathered around in heaven and looking down through this hole in the clouds like, "What you got?" Right? That like, Blessed Peter Kibe, some of y'all know him, right? Because he's my bestie and I never shut up about him. He might come up in a little bit. Who even knows what the Lord's about to do? Blessed Peter Kibe looks at me when I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's too early to be alive." And he's like, "Yeah, I walked 3,700 miles so I could be ordained, get off your butt." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that," right? And I get up, or like I get super angry at somebody and I'm like, "Oh, this is so frustrating. Like, I've been fighting for holiness for so long." And St. Columban is like, "Girl, one time I got so angry, I was a priest, a monk, and an abbot, and I started a holy war that got 3,000 people killed." Like, get up, keep going. You got this. Right? I know that St. Barnabas, he's one of my dearest friends. I know that there are moments where I'm just like overcome by whatever it is that I'm struggling with. And he's like, "Darling, you know you are loved. You are not your sin. You are called to greatness." So some of these saints, I think they stand before us to like snag a little sense into us. Right? And some of them stand before us to say, "Look what you could be." And some of us stand before us to say, "Yeah, I've been there. That's okay. That doesn't define me." And every one of them, what they're doing is the same thing that the author of the letter to the Hebrews says, right? While keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. They look at you and they're like, "Okay, great. Look at Jesus. Keep going." It says, "For the sake of the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross." You were that joy. You joy. You made it worth it. And if every single other person on this planet was Mother Teresa, and you were the only jerk, he would have died with joy for you alone. That's what it is to be a Christian. To be the object of the world's greatest love. Called to incredible holiness. And I think sometimes, and y'all have heard me talk about this before, but I'm not ever going to shut up about it. So if I do, you should probably figure out what's wrong. Maybe I got body snatched or something. Holiness is not lame. Holiness is not boring. Holiness doesn't mean letting go of everything that you love and living this dull, bland, vanilla life. Holiness is wild. Holiness is delightful. Holiness is painful. But it's an affirmation of who you are and who God made you to be. God made me loud. And as many of you have pointed out in recent days, a little crazy. Here's a tip. It's not a compliment to say to somebody, I used to think you were awful, but now I really like you. Just I don't know why that's been the theme of my last couple of days. I guess Holy Spirit's doing something to me. God made me kind of a mess, right? And he loves that about me. And so I get to know saints like Saint Hyacinta Mariscani, right? And she's amazing because she was an absolute brat, right? I mean, she was a decent kid, and maybe she was gonna be a nun, and she was like, no, I think I'm gonna get married, and she met this guy, and he was perfect, and they fell in love, and they were gonna get married, but then he married somebody else, and it was her sister, and it was her little sister. And she was not super excited about that. She actually pitched a fit so bad, her family tied her up and put her in a wagon and dragged her off to the convent. Now, this is not generally how we discern a vocation, okay? If your family ties you up and throws you in a convent, maybe call the police or something, that's weird. But, different times, different strokes, whatever. So they throw her in this convent. She escaped from the convent, snuck out the window and escaped from the convent. And they caught her and they threw her back in. I mean, this is all messed up. Everything that has happened so far in this story is messed up. And she was fine. You're gonna make me be a nun? I'll be a nun, but I will not be a good one. Okay. She's yeah, poverty, chastity, obedience, I'll give you chastity. You're not getting poverty, you're not getting obedience. I'm not gonna do what you say. I'm not gonna wear what you wear. Y'all can wear your burlap habits, mine's gonna be made of silk. Y'all can eat your beans and rice, I'm having peacock, okay? I mean, ridiculous. She has this, fancy suite of rooms. She's got, embroidered wall hangings, all of this stuff. And, I mean, she was, such a disaster of a human being that I guess Mother Spirit was it's just not worth fighting. I don't want you to yell at me, so just do whatever you have to do in your room, right? Everybody was just letting it happen because, it was a tough time and the convent wasn't doing that great, whatever. So eventually she gets a little bit sick, and this priest comes to visit her in her rooms, and he looks around at her rooms, and he said, oh, I see why you're in the convent. And she said, oh, why is that? And he said, so that the devil would have a foothold here. Anybody spiritually directed Father Swank? I feel like he would do that, right? I feel like he would say that. He's great, he's wonderful, and good. But this priest, he spoke truth, and Hyacinta was oh snap. I can't live like this, I can't be this person anymore. So she was I'm done, I'm getting rid of all this stuff, I'm gonna be holy, I'm gonna seek poverty, I'm gonna seek obedience, I'm gonna do what God is calling me to do. And she became incredibly holy for 6 months. It was hard. And she didn't want to fight for holiness. And she backslid, she relapsed. You know what, it wasn't that bad. She wasn't burning down villages or anything like that, like some people's patron saints. But she wasn't who God was calling her to be. And finally, she was on death's door, and she just had this realization, I'm gonna spend my entire life as a nun and I'm gonna go to hell. What a waste. What a waste. I was called to holiness. And I've been sitting here gossiping and lying and deceiving the world. She had this real, genuine conversion. And she became so beautifully holy. She worked miracles. She was a mystic. She had prophetic visions. She started organizations to help the poor. When someone came to the door looking for a meal, she would give them her dinner. And she just became so holy that actually, when she died, at her wake, they had to change her habit 3 times because of the number of people who kept coming and cutting off pieces for relics. It's kind of rude, just so you know, to like cut clothes off the dead. But, you know, like there's just a lot going on apparently in this story. But she was that holy that the whole world knew this woman is going to be a saint. And I love St. Hyacinth and Mariscati because I'm like, you know what? You were a mess. And God used that. Like, you know, that in the throes of holiness, this woman was like, oh, it's lovely. It's sweet. Like, she was always going to be loud. She was always going to have a little bit of sass that, like, maybe she indulged, maybe she didn't. But God made her holy in that. All right, we have saints who were insane brilliant. Right? St. Albert the Great was known as the last man to know all there was to know. Like, all the things that anybody in the Western world knew, he knew them. But he taught Thomas Aquinas, and nobody can know all of Thomas and everything else, so he sort of came over after that. Or the guy I told you about the other day, Nicholas Steno, who was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like be a pioneer in multiple fields of science and also a cardinal, no big deal. Right? We've also got saints who were really dumb. Like, St. Agatha Kim, she couldn't learn the Hail Mary. She was like, I just know Jesus and Mary. And they were like, okay, Hail Mary. And she was like, I only know Jesus and Mary. And they were like, you are actually too dumb to baptize. Which is not a thing, right? They were wrong. In their defense, so this was in Korea in the 19th century, Korea evangelized itself. We didn't send them missionaries. Some teenagers found a catechism written in Chinese. They snuck somebody out of the country to be baptized, and they took a map and divided up Korea and went out evangelizing. And they started converting the country without benefit of a priest. And in the first 40 years that there were Catholics in Korea, there was one priest for 6 years. All the rest was lay people on the strength of the book that they found. One guy converted to Catholicism purely out of scraps of paper that were used to pack in a box. He was like unpacking a box and he found this packing material, and it was like fragments of a catechism, and he was like, shoot, this is true. Okay, so like they were really doing the best they could. If they got like a little bit off about some sacramental theology, I think we can probably forgive that, you know? But they were like, you're too dumb to baptize. And she was like, okay, like I get that. I mean, she only got Jesus and Mary. And then she got arrested for being a Christian. And they were like, deny your faith in Jesus. And she was like, I only know Jesus and Mary. And they're like, tell us where the leaders of your church are. And she was like, I only know Jesus and Mary. And they beat her. She said, I only know Jesus and Mary. And when they threw her in prison, the rest of the Christians fell on their knees before her. And they said, here is Agatha, who only knows Jesus and Mary. And her great shame became her crowning glory. They baptized her then. They slapped a halo on her a couple of decades later. God can use your brilliance, and he can use your difficulty. We got a lot of saints who really struggled in school. We've got other saints who basically invented school. We've got saints who were loud and ridiculous, saints who were meek and quiet, saints who were rich, saints who were poor, saints who were incredibly talented, saints who were disastrous, saints who were beautiful beyond belief. Then we got Blessed Margaret of Castello, who was a blind, lame, hunchback dwarf. Not beautiful beyond belief. And God works in every one of those lives. See, when we are called to holiness, the invitation is to be us. God's not going to call me to be this kind of saint. I tried so hard for so long. It was like 2 weeks. I just wanted to get everybody. Okay? Y'all, that's not how God made me. But God, like, I can yell for Jesus, right? Yeah. I can. It's like, you do all the time. You've noticed this about you. God gives us different gifts, and he calls us to holiness in different ways, right? You don't have to You don't have to dress a certain way to be a saint. You don't have to act a certain way. You don't have to pray a certain way. We talked about that yesterday. There's different ways of praying. God is calling us to be his. But some of us, we got a dark and ugly past. And we want to say, well, that's who I am. I'm damaged goods. Right? Maybe God can forgive me, but he can never make me a great saint. Challenge accepted. Blessed Bartolo Longo was a satanic high priest. He came from a rosary praying family. He picked the wrong college, actually. It's sort of where his downfall came, and found himself involved in the occult and going to seances, and then everything that comes with a high priest of Satan. And he's blessed and on his way to becoming a saint. Because God doesn't quit. Right? We've got St. Mark G. Chan Chan, who was an opium addict. Not had been an opium addict, he was an opium addict at the time of his death. See, he was a doctor in China in the 19th century from a Christian family, and he treated the poor for free, and he's a good man. And then he got the stomach ailment, and he treated himself with laudanum, which is an opiate. He became addicted to opiate. And he would go to confession. And finally, the priest, was confessing the same thing again and again. And now we understand there's not freedom in addiction, right? If you're addicted to something, you're not freely choosing that. But at the time, the priest didn't get that. And he was like, bro, if you're not even trying to be better, stop coming back. I'm not going to absolve you of this sin again. Not cool, right? He's doing the best that he could. If a priest said that to me, if a priest said, I don't care how hard you try, I'm not absolving you, you don't deserve forgiveness, I'd be like, and we're done. I will start my own church, right? I don't need you people. And St. Mark, he was like, all right, I get that. And he showed up at Mass every Sunday. And he didn't receive communion because he wasn't allowed. He was barred from the sacraments for 30 years, and for 30 years he prayed that he would die a martyr because he thought that was the only way that he could be saved. And in 1900, during the Boxer Rebellion, some rebels came to his door, and all the other Christians in town were like, oh yeah, Mark, right? Like, that guy can't go 3 hours without a hit. Like, he can possibly stand strong in the face of torture. And they collected him and some of his children and even his grandchildren. His little grandson said, Grandpa, where are they taking us? And he said, they're taking us home. And he begged the rebels that they would kill him last so that none of his family had to die alone. And he went to his death singing the litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And he is a canonized saint. Because nothing is bigger than God's grace. And nothing is stronger than God's love. Some of us, maybe we have a desire for some sin that we're incredibly ashamed of. And we think, this is who I am. There's something wrong with me at my core. And so maybe I can be decent, but I'm never going to be great. No. See, we come of a heritage of saints who did terrible things, and saints who desired terrible things, and saints who maybe never did anything that bad, but spent their whole lives thinking how much better they were than everybody else. And God is bigger than that sin. God is bigger than your desires. You are not your sin. You aren't your past. You aren't your flaws. You aren't your attractions. You are loved. Completely, unequivocally, wholeheartedly loved. And I think that we have to come to a place where we're willing to say, okay, you know what? I'm weak. Jesus, I need you to be strong. I don't know what purity looks like with my past. I don't know what humility looks like with my past. I don't know how to be an athlete and a saint. You won't be the first one, but it's hard, right? It's hard being on a team and trying to seek Jesus. It's hard being in theater and trying to seek Jesus. It's hard being a scientist and trying to seek Jesus. It's hard being a human being and trying to seek Jesus, right? It's going to be hard in all kinds of different ways, and we have to say, Jesus, you be God in this. And I love looking at St. Peter. St. Peter, talk about a mess. St. Peter's a mess, right? Every time you turn around, St. Peter's doing something ridiculous. I love when Jesus calls him, right? And Peter's out on the boat, and Jesus says, have you caught anything? And Peter's like, no, we haven't caught anything. And Jesus is like, put your nets out. You know, Peter, this is in Luke 5. Peter has this sort of like, I mean, it's a terrible idea. I know about fish and you're a carpenter, but I just will do it, right? Like, don't you love when you hedge your bets with God? When you're like, Jesus, this is a bad idea, but okay, I'm going to do you a solid. And he's like hanging on the cross, like, thanks for the favor. Peter says, Master, we've worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command, I'll lower the nets. I mean, at this point, Peter's seen Jesus work some miracles, but he like hasn't been that impressed. Jesus raised his mother-in-law when his mother-in-law was sick. It doesn't say how Peter felt about that. So Jesus says, cast your nets over the side. And they pull them up, and they're filled almost to tearing. They catch so many fish, they need to ask for help. They call over James and John, which is amazing. Because Peter is a big, strong, tough fisherman who has his life together, but he realizes his weakness in that moment. And because he knows he's weak and asks for help, we have the Gospel of John. We have 1 John. We have Revelation. Because he was willing to ask for help. Right? So they pull in all of these fish, and then Peter, seeing this miracle, runs up to Jesus, falls at his feet, and says, go away! And that is not what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to say, like, my Lord and my God, or like, I worship you. Peter's like, no, go away. I'm a sinner, and all I'm ever going to be is a sinner. Depart from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man. And Jesus just looks at me and he's like, yeah, but I got this. He says, I will make you fishers of men. And then every time we see Peter, you know, he's got these great moments. He's like, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus is like, bam, I'm going to build my church on you. And Peter's like, that's awesome. And Jesus is like, I'm going to suffer and die. And Peter's like, bro, hey, come here. Come here. Peter took him aside. How condescending can you be with the God of the universe? Peter's like, Jesus, let me talk to you a minute. So I have a better plan. Do you now? He says, God forbid, Lord, that such a thing should happen to you. And you know in there's pride, because he's like, I mean, later on, when Jesus is captured in the garden, Peter pulls out his sword. And we're like, Peter, he has all the legions of angels. He does not need a fisherman with a sword. You're not even good at it. You cut off the guy's ear. What were you going for? Peter, he's like, no, it's okay. Like, I got this, right? At one point, when Jesus says, you're going to deny me, Peter's like, even if I have to lay down my life for you, I will never deny you. He doesn't ask for grace. He doesn't ask for help. He's just like, look, I got this. Like 20 minutes later, he's falling asleep in the garden. Jesus is like, yeah, even if you should have to lay down your life, but no, keep your eyes open. An hour after that, Peter's denying him, standing by a charcoal fire because he's a pansy and can't handle that it's a little bit chilly. So he goes over to the fire, and these people are like, oh, you kind of have the same accent. He's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I never even met the guy. Wow, big tough Peter, okay. He denies Jesus because he didn't ask for the grace to be strong. And then Jesus rises from the dead. He comes back. And that first night in the upper room, do you remember what he said to Peter? Nothing. Peter said nothing to him. See, Luke's gospel tells us that after Peter denied Jesus, Jesus looked at him. There's like a moment. Peter knows that Jesus knows what he did. Jesus rises from the dead, and I think Peter's like, oh shoot. We have to talk about this. And then Jesus doesn't say anything. And then he comes back and he goes straight to Thomas, and he's like, hey Thomas, let's talk about this. Put your finger in my holes, right? Put your hand in the hole in my side. Let's talk about this. But he doesn't say a word to Peter. What does Peter do the next morning? He gets up and he goes fishing. Because he's like, I guess this is all I am. I thought I could be somebody, but I'm an idiot. I'm a jerk. I made a mistake, and that is all that I am. I'm just a fisherman. I'm just a loser with a boat. I could have been somebody, but I messed up. And Jesus doesn't quit on him. Jesus doesn't give up. Jesus builds a charcoal fire. We only see that twice in the Gospels. Peter denies next to a charcoal fire, and then Jesus brings him back next to a charcoal fire. And there Peter is in his boat, and everybody else is like, I mean, he's the Pope. I guess we're going fishing today. Maybe this is like Fishing Monday. And they're all in the boat, and they hear Jesus call, haven't you caught anything? And Peter's like, that sounds familiar. And he says, throw your nets over again. And Peter's like, wait, are you serious? Like, is this a do-over? Like, are we starting again? And they throw their nets over, and they pull up, and they're filled with fish again. And Peter's just standing there like, oh my gosh, I think he's giving me a second chance. I think we're starting again. And John's like, it's Jesus. And then Peter, because he's never gonna stop being a mess, he puts on his shirt, because he's not fishing, he wasn't wearing a shirt. He puts his shirt back on and jumps into the water and swims to shore. Because he's just so desperate to be with Jesus that he forgets that boats move through the water while keeping you dry. So he swims to shore, everybody else is already there and dry and just looking at him. And he comes out all drippy. And Jesus says to him, he says, Peter, do you love me? And he uses the word agape for full, complete, self-giving love. And Peter, a week and a half ago, would have been like, bro, I love you more than anybody in the world loves you. You think you know love? I will love you so your eyes bleed. But this Peter, he knows he's weak. And he uses a different word for love. He uses the word philia, which means brotherly love. So Jesus says to him, Peter, do you love me completely with everything you are? And Peter says, I really like you. And Jesus is like, okay, this I can work with. Feed my sheep. Then he says, Peter, do you love me completely with your whole heart? And Peter was like, Jesus, I really like you a lot. Peter, and Jesus was like, yes. Because Peter finally, he's aware of his weakness. And he knows that he needs help. Some of us, we had this conversion and we're like, bam, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to pray 18 hours a day. And I'm never talking to anybody again who's ever done a sin. And Jesus was like, yeah, good luck. It's going to be great. And you crash and burn, right? Peter had crashed and burned. And from the ground, he looks up at Jesus and he's like, I'm not who I should be. And Jesus says, now that you know that, now I can work with you. And so for the third time, Jesus says to him, Peter, do you like me? And Peter's like, I do. I like you so much. And Jesus is like, awesome. 3 times Peter denied him 3 times. Jesus gives him the opportunity. But he says, I want you to be real with me. I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me what you really are. And God loved Peter. Immediately after that, Jesus is like, you're going to die a martyr's death. And Peter's like, what about John? What's happening with John? What's his deal? Because I know that he sat next to you at the Last Supper, and I was 2 seats in. So Jesus was like, bro, keep your eyes on your own paper. Right? He says, what if I want him to return until I come? What business is it of yours? You follow me. That's a great line. We talked yesterday about comparison in prayer. Jesus says to Peter, he's not your business. You follow me. See, we look to the saints to see models of what holiness might look like in our lives, what overcoming might look like in our lives. But at the heart of it, they're pointing our eyes to Jesus so we can look at him and say, I am weak. I am not who I should be. Jesus, take me and heal me and make me new and make me a saint. This is why I love the saints. Because they show me that in my brokenness, in my temptation, in my disastrous personality, in the circumstances of my life, I can be a saint. But I gotta stand with Peter and say, you know what, I'm not who I should be. And be God. And I'll stumble along the best I can. You guys have the opportunity to be a cohort of great saints. But you gotta be you following Jesus. You don't get to walk in anybody else's path. You gotta be you following Jesus, and you gotta let him be strong. So let's go be saints. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.